shall stick to the script. Thank you very much, Program Director. The Board of Trustees and Executive Leadership of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, the Deputy Secretary General of the African National Congress, Comrade 𝘗𝘕𝘊 𝘐𝘥𝘦𝘢𝘴, former leaders of the ANC, leaders present here today, and the masses of our people. The members of the media, fellow South Africans, importantly today, we acknowledge the patron of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, the former president of the ANC and our republic, Comrade 𝘛𝘩𝘦 𝘠𝘩𝘦. We must, as we should, today turn to our forebears and the gods of our people and say, "Lizali sidinga Thixo wenyaniso. Ngeziphithiphithi zethu yonakele imihlaba. Lawula lawula Yesu." A hymn composed by Rev. 𝘗𝘩𝘦 𝘐𝘥𝘦𝘢𝘴, signaling the birth of a new nation. This hymn was sung at the ANC inaugural meeting in 1912. It still resonates to this very day. Ariel Dorfman, a Chilean renowned author, writer, and activist, delivering the 8th Nelson Mandela Lecture, warns us of the dangers of forgetting. He posits that memory does not exist in a vacuum, that a nation must bequeath its historical experiences of the past to younger generations to ensure that those memories did not die. Each generation has its supreme duty and calling, and therefore building up on the legacy and memories of the generation before it to provide a solid foundation upon which to continue the struggle for a just and humane society worldwide. A nation that does not take into account the multitude of suppressed memories of the majority of its people will always be weak, basing its survival on the exclusion of dissent and otherness. Those whose lives are not valued, not given narrative dignity, cannot really be part of the solution of the abiding problems of our times. Close quote. Today, we are gathered here to give narrative dignity to this injunction by this Chilean revolutionary Ariel Dorfman to one of our own. 2 days ago, on the 24th of April, we commemorated the passing on of the twin towers of our struggle, President Oliver Tambo, who passed on barely a fortnight after the brutal assassination of Chris Thembisile Martin-Hani. This month is awash with the passing of icons of our struggle who immensely contributed to our democratic breakthrough in 1994. Earlier this month, on the 6th of April, we commemorated the brutal murder of Solomon Kalushi Mahlangu. May his soul and souls of many of his ilk repose in eternal peace. Similarly, on the 2nd of April, we observed the anniversary of the passing on of yet one of the great titans of our freedom, uMama Winnie Madikizela Mandela. In no distant hours from today, we will celebrate 30 years of democracy, an historic occasion that defied the odds when the masses of our people overwhelmingly participated for the first time in voting a government that democratically represented their aspirations, their wishes, their hopes, and dreams. We meet here tonight undoubtedly inspired by the presence of greatness, to retrace the footprints and celebrate the publication of ANC Today, a publication on his shoulders rested firmly on President Thabo Mbeki. In all those years, he too was inspired for being in the presence of such indomitable greatness of the leaders of our movement. In his entire life, President Mbeki has always revered his comrades and leaders, whether or not he agreed with them. As a genuine patriot, he sought to ease their burden. He could be aggressive in asserting his beliefs, but he respectfully acknowledges those with whom he differs. It troubles him deeply when others make unworthy comments about those in his view who have been entrusted with our future and therefore the hopes of mankind. It is indeed not surprising that President Mbeki continues to live a life of immense courage, vision, and enterprise devoted to the advancement of his fellow citizens in this country. Many of those who have the honor of getting to know 𝘕𝘊 Mbeki can attest that he is a man of humor, a great and a listener. And a listener. People always warm to him. There are words that some people can't pronounce. His genuine interest and sincerely for people's lives and well-being is undoubtedly the hallmark of his existence. Wherever he is in life and in whatever sphere he moves, the friendliness he exudes to others make him a friend. To the fatherless they have a father, and to the poor he enriches through the generosity of spirit. He continues to advocate kindness, revolutionary discipline, and commitment towards a just and humane society. The genuine attributes of selfless service to the cause of humanity comes through in every fiber of his being. He stands tall as a towering cathedral and whose red talents are employed on the side of freedom and truth. He is a patriot whose main virtues were shaped by circumstances and whose integrity baffled the scrutiny of his enemies. He has made integrity something to be emulated and therefore qualifies to be referred to as the moral compass of our revolution and the national heritage at large. I say this not to simply praise him because he is with us, but from the knowledge and experience with him as a leader, a visionary, a gallant fighter for freedom. He is a man of such high caliber, rare talent and selflessness that we all feel magnitude of his greatness, of his presence. He continues to live a humble and simple but very meaningful life. He is an unassuming person, but his sharp intellect and tremendous courage to face any kind of challenge has earned him a formidable presence. President Mbeki has the capacity to grasp and cut through complex issues and move forward. It is these qualities that he used to lead the charge in the transformation of this country and that of our continent, restoring the dignity of South Africans and Africans as a whole. President Mbeki is uncompromising where his people's interests are concerned. He is, however, not rigid. He recognizes the value of new ideas, of adapting practice to circumstance, and innovation in the socio-economic transformation of his country. For all of this, he is sometimes misunderstood. Not because he is wrong, but because he is ahead of many in these matters. He is the one former ANC president of whom we could say he was our leader without any fear of self-contradictions. President Mbeki understood and had a deep appreciation of the role of media and the battle of ideas as an instrument to advance the cause of the struggle from his early years as youth in the ANC. Having participated in the ANC's Department of Information and Publicity, DIP, He went on to play a leading role in Radio Liberation, which later became Radio Freedom. Indeed, the ANC was spoiled with a galaxy of icons of the liberation struggle upon the political unburning, such as Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, 𝘗𝘳𝘦 Raymond Mhlaba, Albertina Sisulu, Sophie de Bruyn, Adelaide Tambo, Joe Slovo, and countless others. As many of you would know, O.R. Tambo himself was steeped into the culture of media and battle of ideas, as attested to by the annual January 8th statements. It was a culture that President Mbeki himself revitalized and further buttressed through the launch of the ANC Today in 2001. This is the legacy and heritage of the ANC and continues to this very day. A fundamental question we need to pose to ourselves as members of the African National Congress: are we worthy heirs of his rich legacy? And the answer to this question lies in our ability to appreciate the challenges we face and our ability to resolve them, tapping on the experiences and lessons we continue to sip from elders like President Mbeki. Very importantly, the views espoused in the terrain of the battle of ideas, as propagated by various institutions and media houses, were essentially narratives reflective of the political, social, and economic context of what we must become as a country. I deliberately say as a country because whilst we all occupied the same geopolitical space that we call South Africa, at least since the Union of South Africa of 1910, there was nonetheless a concerted effort aimed at dividing us on the defaults of race, tribe, gender, and class against our position on building a united nation from the ruins of colonial and apartheid oppression. Today, there exist some who espouse a narrative that suggests one race is superior to another, which has seen some brazenly calling for the cessation of the Western Cape province from the rest of South Africa, which all our departed struggle icons will have frowned upon. And in a similar vein, there are some who believe that South Africa must continue to be balkanized alongside tribe, significantly attested to by narrow tribal political and electoral mobilization. This is backwardness of the highest order. In his weekly letters, President Mbeki articulated, among others, on the demon of racism that requires all of us to exercise as we craft the National Democratic Society envisioned in the strategy and tactics of the ANC, which characterizes us as a united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic and prosperous society. And that to be achieved, we must ensure equality across race, gender, and class. The ANC Today became a foremost platform for the ANC's narrative of building a society that is premised on the Freedom Charter and the promise of our Constitution. President Mbeki lauded the fact that the Constitution enjoins us to create this national democratic society, canvassing all and sundry to partake in this great project of nation building premised on resolving the national question. And in so doing, he continuously cautioned us that we dare not fail, because the collapse of such a project will spell out our collective doom, irrespective of race, tribe, gender, or class. Whilst the golden thread of the President Letters on ANC Today presented his statesmanship nationally and internationally, he nonetheless never shied away from the fact that this was the defense of the ANC, both as a revolutionary movement and as a ruling party. This is because he knew very well that despite the lofty ideals of our constitutionalism, against which he reminded all of us as a nation that we were enjoined to fulfill, he nonetheless was conscious of the contest of multiplicity of narratives that were anti-ethical to the historic mission of the African National Congress. There was a big debate about the relaunch or the launch of the ANC Today. in the ANC and society at large. For that reason, there was never confusion at any stage, because the president will continuously speak, and in that sense, by extension, the ANC always spoke on any matter. In this way, the ANC Today and the President's Letters left the conventional media terrain with envy, as this divested the platform of the battle of ideas away from their monopoly and became the voice of the people, as it were, during the days of radio freedom and the many publications that were banned by the apartheid regime. President Mbeki's intellectual contribution reaffirmed the narrative that sought to contest the domination of the African majority, both continentally and in the diaspora, whilst linking the claims of freedom and democracy as universal principles that will otherwise be a hollow claim by any proponent, unless by extended to all races, gender, and class. Like the great leaders such as Booker T. Washington, Marcus Garvey, John Dube, Julius Nyerere, Kenneth Kaunda, Samora Machel, and Kwame Nkrumah, he too believed that for our narrative to see the light of day, we must as a movement be alive to the importance of our role and agency as the motive forces of our revolution. And that consequently, those who stand to lose from institutionalized monopoly of ideas and the projects that flows from them will naturally be opposed to the National Democratic Revolution. The ANC today has assumed the political canvas of the masses of our people for their own liberation. Accordingly, he championed the creation of democratic institutions in the country, whilst continentally he championed the new Partnership for Africa's Development, NEPAD, premised on his advocate for the African Renaissance under his watch. Under his watch, the Organization of African Unity transitioned into the African Union. President Mbeki lives true to the assertion that ideas do not exist for themselves. And he exemplifies that through making practical his call for the African Renaissance. He understands and has deep appreciation that the narrative opposed to our revolution do not just have a national network, but also a global political network arrayed against the progressive agenda for change and often backed by powerful political forces. It was against this backdrop that he was an undisputed champion of the South internationally, fiercely protesting the domination of the North over the South, the global center against the global periphery. We have seen these political forces arrayed against us as we took on the baton of struggle that President Mbeki passed on to us for the freedom of Palestine and against the ongoing genocide in Gaza, as well as striving for peace in Sudan, DRC, freedom of the people of Western Sahara, the call for democratization in Eswatini, and the removal of the Cuban blockade. His letters were in their own a profound political school, an oasis from which many of our ANC Youth League generation sipped wisdom without measure. I was privileged to have been part of the Youth League at the time as its Secretary General and later whilst I was ANC Youth League President. At this point, allow me to strike a personal note. My opposition to President Mbeki as president in Polokwane was not an opposition to him as my leader. And then it was just a matter of succession. And it never erased in my mind that he's one of the best of the African National Congress. And I want to tell you today, President, when you were removed by the ANC, no, I decided like this as president. I said I strike a personal note. So I was one of the people through Andy Lenkutlu who was very opposed to that. But bygones be bygones. Today, we really applaud the foresight of those behind the publication, of these esteemed letters, President Mbeki himself lauded the ANC DIP for steering the launch of ANC Today in 2001, and we echo his words today. Accordingly, in this vein, the authors of the book remind us in the introduction under a prologue. I therefore wish this new venture, ANC Today, the success it deserves. Historically, the national and political constituency represented by the ANC has had very few and limited mass media throughout the 90 years of its existence. During this period, the commercial newspaper and magazine press representing views, values, and interests of the white minority dominated the field of mass media. Close quote. Tonight, on the month of April 2024, these letters are being posited into the annals of our history, worthy of being the legitimate narrative of the African National Congress for at least the period of 2001 to 2004. They are accordingly sealed into a vault that will never be undermined by the thuggery of counter-revolutionaries, but instead accessible to all freedom-loving people. This is the narrative that our generation, as the current leaders of the African National Congress, endorse as the official version of our history, and that anything to the contrary is duly an ordinary contest of the ANC's narrative. As we grapple with the battle of ideas, contesting even the evidence of our unparalleled record on socio-economic transformation, the ANC Today Letters will be our handbook against those who seek to politically liquidate the African National Congress and replace it with clients of imperialism and neocolonialism. We will await publication of the remainder of the letters, of which I believe will be volume 2. We profoundly thank the compilers of this book, who baptized these intellectual letters into academic scholarship, as they profoundly asserted that, I quote, African intellectuals within the South African context can be categorized into at least 3 types: old African intellectuals, new African intellectuals, and radical African intellectuals, and accordingly further asserted that Thabo Mbeki represents these 3 African intellectual traditions. As a protege of President Oliver Tambo, he would have been elated by this publication had he been alive. O.R. Tambo belonged to prior generation to yours, but your proximity to him under his tutelage make it to appear as if you were of the same generation. This is attributable to the manner you carried your revolutionary duties under O.R. Tambo. This reminds me about a point which needs to be emphasized time and again, that being at the same meeting with a comrade does not make you to belong to the same generation. And this is what is called, quote unquote, transcending of generations. I will leave to the readers of this book on the further elaboration of these 3 schools of thoughts as propounded by the book authors, and as entailed in chapter 1, of which they accordingly asserted are all composite in the singular person of President Thabo Mbeki. Thank you, Comrade President Mbeki, for your profound counsel, intellectual gravitas, and wisdom through the weekly letters, for your pioneering works and profound leadership example. Indeed, 𝘗𝘕𝘊 𝘐𝘥𝘦𝘢𝘴. And we are proud to say this whilst you are still well and alive. You are indeed worth of being honored, as is 𝘗𝘩𝘦 and other accolades from our national orders. As I conclude, Comrade President, we can report to you tonight that 𝘗𝘕𝘦 are indeed leaving the ANC in droves as we embark on organizational renewal. And may God Almighty nezinyanya ozizi exceedingly bless you and uMamzanele Mbeki with good health and longevity of life. Long live President, long live. Long live. Long live the veterans of our liberation movement, long live. Long live the ANC, long live. Long live Thabo Mbeki, long live. Thank you.